Hi everybody, welcome to this new video for the Gen AI Nerd channel. And in this video, I want to explain you how you can use agentic loops to improve your academic writing when you're engaging in research. And in this video, I will kind of discuss three topics. So let me briefly explain what we will do in this video. So first of all, I want to explain what agentic loops exactly are and how they are different from normal prompting. Next, I will try to make it clear what you will need to provide as input to effectively use agentic loops. And finally, I will of course demonstrate agentic loops in the ChatGPT desktop application. And more specifically, I will show you how you can create an agentic loop to help you to write a section for a specific hypothesis that you want to formulate in an academic paper. So let's get started. Yes, so let me briefly explain what we exactly mean when we talk about agentic loops. Yeah, so normally when you use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, you write a prompt, then you will get an answer, improve the output by writing follow-up prompts. And with an agentic loop, we will actually automate that system. And so what an agentic loop exactly will do is that instead of you evaluating the output and trying to improve it, we will kind of outsource this to the agent itself. So we will write an agentic loop, actually fostering the agent to itself evaluate the output, try to improve it, and then step by step kind of give us the final answer. And so let me try to illustrate what that exactly means. And so normally when we engage in prompting ourselves, we would write a first prompt. So that means we would go from attempt 0 to attempt 1. That's our first attempt. And then we might already reach a certain quality. And then by actually writing follow-up prompts, we can improve the quality. And let's say now, based on a certain benchmark, we're able then after 9 attempts to bring it to a quality of 71. An agentic loop works as follows. So then actually, when we formulate an agentic loop, the agent will do already a number of iterations so that in the first attempt, we will already be able to reach a much higher quality level. And then we ourselves, again, by follow-up prompts, should be able to reach a much higher final outcome level. So that's fundamentally what agentic loops do. They help us in one single attempt to already reach a much higher quality level. So let me now explain what you need to provide to initiate an agentic loop. Yeah, so fundamentally, you need to provide two things. First of all, you need to really clearly explain what is the goal that you want to achieve. So here we actually go from formulating a specific task to a specific goal, and we will actually give the agent also some freedom in determining how it should execute that task. Yeah, but so be very precise in what the loop should achieve, what kind of output you really want, and what kind of quality expectations you have. Yeah? And in that way, the agent will be able to independently try to reach this goal. At the same time, you also have to formulate a kind of benchmark. Yeah? So you will have to formulate when the output is good enough to stop. Yeah? And so in one way or another, you need to be able to quantify kind of the output that you want to achieve. Because if you don't do that, there is the risk that the agent will just continue looping and looping and looping. And in the end, this will mean that you will consume a lot of tokens. Yeah? So that your subscription might kind of run out of tokens. And that's, of course, an issue. So these are the two things that you need to do. And let me now show you how you can do that with a specific example. Yes, and so to easily build agentic loops, actually, I use nowadays the ChatGPT desktop application. So you cannot do this in the ChatGPT browser. You really need to have the desktop application. I have a separate video on how to install this desktop application, which will be in the description of this video. But so if you're in the ChatGPT desktop application, you can simply start a new chat. And then you have to go here to this plus sign. And here you will see that you have the option goal. And the moment you have enabled this goal option, you actually have enabled this kind of agentic loop function in ChatGPT. So that's the first thing you need to do. And now we can formulate our goal and our benchmark to kick off the loop. So let me show you that with a specific example. Yes, so here is my example. And now let's take the hypothetical example that I'm writing a paper about how working experience of founders impacts their startup success. And let's imagine that I want to test the following hypotheses. So startup teams that have at least one co-founder who has at least 5 years of working experience as a consultant at one of the big 5 consultants are likely to raise more seed funding than startups without such a founder. Yes, so this is now the hypothesis that I want to test in the paper. And in an academic paper, we then also have to kind of theoretically ground that hypothesis, meaning we have to kind of rely on existing theoretical insights to clarify why this hypothesis is quite reasonable to expect. So let me now show you how we can build an agentic loop to help us in formulating kind of the theoretical reasoning for this hypothesis. So what you see is I started with formulating the goal, and this is quite straightforward. I now said that the goal is to generate a theory development section for the following hypothesis. So here I formulated the goal. On top of that, I give this agentic loop 2 skills. So I have built skills before that actually will push it to write in my tone of voice based on my kind of best practices. So I have one skill that is called the theoretical background writer skill. So this is a skill that I have learned how I prefer to write theoretical background sections. And I have an overall skill where I've learned how to write in my tone of voice. I have separate videos about this, which I will put in the description of the YouTube video. But so you have to see it that I give now the agentic loop some skills that it can use to realize this goal. And finally, we of course also have to provide the benchmark. And so let me show you now how I have done this. Yeah, so here I'm saying, look, you need to consider 3 experts in publishing in top-level journals. The first expert needs to evaluate the quality, focus, and consistency of the theoretical framing. The second expert needs to evaluate the relevance of the provided academic references. And the third expert evaluates the writing quality. Yeah? And then I'm saying each expert provides feedback, and based on the feedback, the section needs to be improved. And then I'm saying, look, engage in at least 2 iterations. Each expert needs to evaluate a section on a scale from 0 to 10. The goal is to accomplish an average grade that exceeds 9.5 out of 10. And then I have given it as a final part some input information about arguments that needs to be incorporated in the section so that it has a kind of starting point. But I hope you see that I clearly formulated a goal, and I also formulated a benchmark where I've also tried to make sure that it can quantify this benchmark. And in this case, that these 3 experts need to agree that the average score is more than 9.5 out of 10. And then I can press enter, and then it will start executing this agentic loop. Yes, and here you can see it has been working for 2 minutes and 21 seconds, so that's not that extremely long. And you see here that it stopped because the 3 experts all were giving a score of more than 9.5 out of 10. And then this was the benchmark that it had to reach. So then it stopped iterating. And so here you can see then the section that it has written for me. So this is kind of a theoretical background section where you can see it has added quite some references to kind of give me the necessary argumentation for my hypothesis. Yeah, and like in an academic paper, it then added the hypothesis at the end. Yeah? So here you see quite already a sophisticated explanation where it actually indeed refers to very specific mechanisms like signaling and social capital to help me build this hypothesis. And so this is just an example how you can start leveraging agentic loops to help you get much better output in a first attempt. And then of course you can still further improve now this output to really make it excellent. Yes, so this is what I wanted to show you, how you can use agentic loops to help you with your academic writing. Of course, you can use this in a very ethical way, but also in a very unethical way. Yeah, so if you use it as a kind of replacement of yourself, where you simply ask the agentic loop to write text for you and then copy paste it in your paper, I think that's very unethical. And to be honest, based on my experience, then the quality of your text will not reach the quality expectations of top-level journals. I think you rather have to see it as an assistant that can give you inspiration for certain sentences, for certain mechanisms, for certain references, and then you can kind of see how you can leverage these suggestions for your own writing. But at least I think it can still give you a lot of interesting suggestions that you can then use in an ethical way when doing academic writing. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like this kind of videos. And thanks for your attention. Bye.